What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Saturday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. I see my internet is trying to kill me again. It happens. It's Saturday afternoon. But joining me, as always, Slim Cliffy. I just got confused for a second. I was like, you're not wearing a Christmas sweater. And I was like, oh, Christmas was like 3 weeks ago. But here you are.
Man, it honestly crossed my mind today. I was like, I'm still kind of in the holiday spirit because we're getting some of that weather that everybody else has been getting. Quite the 12 gamer we have here tonight. Noticed all 32 teams are playing 16 games today for this afternoon, early afternoon, late afternoon, whatever, and then 12 tonight. Couple teams on back-to-backs where we're not going to get information until later. There's a couple pretty notable injuries, one especially in Winnipeg that we'll talk about, but couple hammer spots here on the slate tonight. And with, a couple of those really high-end lines and hammer spots, it's drawing some ownership and it's leaving some places under-owned. So lots to like about this slate here.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because my process is I'll do the run sheet for us, and then I kind of like this spot. I kind of like this spot, and I'll go check the ownership. I have no idea what I want to do on this slate. There's nothing that really stands out. So, I believe Josh lives in the same town as me. It's possible, certainly possible. If you are in Warren County, New Jersey, that narrows it down. I'm not going to dox myself right now, but yeah, certainly possible. Massapequa. I do not live near Massapequa, I don't think. I'll have to Google it. But anyway, we starting the day with a $50 super chat from our household name, Mark Brandon 0328. Happy support your local fantasy hockey prognosticator day. Despite the Arctic conditions outside, we're going to stay hot. Going back to ride the Svetch train and Carolina wagon. Svetch with the Hattie tonight. Locked it in last night at 80-1. Dropped now. Pretty much you're just going to, I don't know. If Svetch has a Hattie, you can pick me up in your private jet and we can go rage. I don't know. Do some HGH or something. But thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. I think that is your fifth one to us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Maybe it's like a good luck charm at this point. Hopefully it's a good luck charm for you. Kind of something of a karmic nature, let's say. So not a bad spot for Carolina. It's the first game that we're going to talk about. Let's hope you can hit that. It'd be good for everybody, I think. Thanks a lot. We certainly appreciate your support, and let's try to win some money tonight.
Yeah. No, I'm not in Long Island. My grandparents lived in Long Island when I was growing up. They lived in Port Washington, so if that's close, it's possible. But nope, don't live in Massapequa. That's why I always, give the Islanders fans shit for, having their home rink pretty much in Portugal. But let's get into this slate. Before we do, just want to say thank you so much for the support. You guys are nuts, man. Every morning I wake up and check the affiliate dashboard. We have more monthlies. We have more weeklies. It's just crazy. I popped the link into the chat there. It doesn't even have to be for hockey. If you're interested in our MMA products, our NBA, PGA, lineup builder, Sims, whatever you want, man, just go through the link. It helps us out, supports us directly. You guys rule. And we'll catch you on the flip side. But let's start this slate off with the Penguins. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 3 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes, 3.5 total. I don't even need to talk about the Hurricanes because Mark Brandon, Svetch Hattie, and he's so hot right now. Hansel. But I do like the Carolina top line here tonight. They're not getting a ton of ownership. 2.9%. Some positive leverage. It is a 3.5 total. They're going to get the Crosby Raquel mat. Are they? Yeah, right. They've been sending that line out against top comp, right?
Yeah, they have. They haven't been using the stall line as much in a shutdown matchup, but they'll still use it. You know what I mean? And honestly, I think at this point, like both of Pittsburgh's top two lines have been playing pretty well defensively. So I don't think there's a big advantage one over the other.
Yeah, I mean, we say, Raquel being up on the top line definitely helps them because when Russ was up there, they were a trade chance machine. But I still do like Carolina here. They have a 3.5 home total. Crosby, Gensel, Raquel is the matchup there. They'll probably see a fair bit of, but like, it doesn't really scare me that much. Like, is there a goalie controversy in Pittsburgh too? Like, they've been starting Ned a bunch. He hasn't been great. They've been starting Yari a bunch. He hasn't been great. So like, maybe they're searching, but I do like Carolina 1 here. Carolina 3. I know people love to one-off Jarvis because he's on the top power play. It's just like the ownership there is pretty high. And I think, that's Jarvis driven, right? So if you're going to use Jarvis, you probably should have someone on that line with him come along, or you just kind of power play stack, but it's not the best power play matchup anyway. So I'm kind of out on the Carolina third line here. If you want to, for me, it's Carolina 1. Carolina 2 just doesn't get enough minutes for me. So on the Pittsburgh side, I kind of do like that top line. It's not a good matchup. It's Ronta. You know what I mean? Like, Kochekov's hurt. They have goalie issues now. So, like, while I don't love stacking against Carolina on a 12-game slate with a team on the road, it's just like their goalies have just been atrocious. Their best goalie's now out. Freddie Anderson's still not back. So, like, I think you can take a flyer on Pitt 1 here.
Yeah, on the Carolina side, like I agree with you with the top line. Like that would be like the 3-man line that I would definitely lean to. Especially like we talked about it on Thursday's show. I mentioned in Thursday's article as well, just how well the Carolina power play has been playing. And I don't mean like just by goal scoring, because obviously they've been scoring their guts out on the power play since Svechnikov got back. But it's more just how much they're generating, right? That's generally a pretty good indicator of how well a power play is running, and they're generating a ton of shots. Like, this is a team that generates a lot anyway, but it just gives a little bit of security for when those shooting percentages do come down. That stall line is kind of interesting for me. Like, there is a lot of ownership. You mentioned how they're coming in like way over owned. Top Stacks has them about 6.3% ownership against a 0.5% top 2 stack probability. I don't think I would 3-man stack them outright. Like, I think I would 2-man like Jarvis and Martinook, especially. I think even though if you need a center, Jarvis and Stahl is just fine. I wrote up said Jarvis in the picks article. Like, he's a guy that does a lot of heavy lifting for this team offensively. When the top line is off the ice, he had a great game. I think it was on Thursday when he had the 3-point night. I really do. Like, I don't even mind just playing a Jarvis one-off. Like, honestly, like if ownership of like 7, 8, 9% or whatever, like that's not a big deal to me for a one-off winger. I think he's only 4,900 on DK. So like he's projecting with really good value. So I don't mind him as a one-off. On the Pittsburgh side, like where they are using that Stahl Martinook line to shut down opposing top lines, like that Stahl Martinook line with Jarvis there, like they've still been really, really good defensively. 1.3 expected goals against per 60 minutes. It's the top line that hasn't been that good defensively for Carolina. Carolina's top line, 2.8 expected goals against per 60 minutes. Like, that's below average. And that's the matchup that the Malkin line is probably going to see a fair bit of here tonight. And since Malkin and Russ got put back together, like they've been pretty dynamic. It's only like 80 minutes, but like this was a line that was really good last year as well. 3.4 expected goals per 60, 3.2 actual goals per 60. Malkin has 11 points in his last 11 games, averaging 3.5 shots or 3.6 shots per game. Like, he's really been flying since Russ got back on their line. They're going to avoid like that Martinook matchup. And you mentioned Antti Raanta. Like they had to, like, they Ilya Samsonov this guy to the AHL because he was playing so poorly. And I don't, like, maybe he bounces back, but like I got to see more than like one good game out of him to really be scared of him, considering how bad the first 2.5 months were with Ronta in net. Like, he was arguably the worst goalie in the league, like not just a backup or a starter, like of anybody. So I kind of like Pittsburgh too here. They are a bit expensive here. They're a little bit over 15K on DraftKings, so that's a little bit expensive, but you're not really targeting Pittsburgh here tonight for a power play opportunity because Carolina's power play is generally very good. You only get Malkin on the top unit, but 0.2% ownership. Like, if you want just like two-man like Malkin and O'Connor or something like that, I think that's fine. But I think Pittsburgh too could just, until Ronta shows, at least like a couple weeks or something, that he's not getting his brains beat in every single time he takes the ice. I'm going to be interested in lines going against him, and considering Malkin's going to avoid that shutdown stall matchup, I kind of like the Malkin line here as like one of those mid-priced filler stacks.
Yeah, and it's not like Pittsburgh has a low total either. They have a 3, which is fairly decent for a team going into Carolina, whether that's the totals baked into Ronta starting or them just expecting goals. Like, I don't know what Vegas thinks, but like a 3 road total, if this was the Carolina team last year, it doesn't matter who's going into Carolina. That total's like 2.7, you know what I mean? So I think there is some merit to stacking Pittsburgh here tonight. Seattle Kraken, they 3.3 total. Heading into Columbus, the Blue Jackets have a 2.7 total. I think I just saw, green. Okay. I am more frequently referred to as the original Gringo Mandingo. Josh, you understand, Ocho nickname. Yeah, no, I grew up in the restaurant business. A lot of people talk to me in Spanish. They called me Ocho. I don't know why. But yeah, Gringo Mandingo, Ocho. We can start a sitcom with the Fetch Hatties. But yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't start this show or this game without talking about Ken Johnson. Here's the thing. Like, you take center out of it. You take center out of the equation for Columbus, and they need Budenjenner back badly. And I have watched some Columbus more than I would like to admit. When I watch Columbus, the 2 best forwards outside of centers, right, and it's Kirill Marchenko and Ken Johnson. So now they're actually giving Ken Johnson some line mates here. He's with Adam Fantilli and Jack Roslovic. I don't know if tonight's the night, though. Like, they are cheap enough where it's a filler and it's fine. But, like, Seattle has been very good lately. Joey Decord has been the hottest goalie in the NHL. I don't know if that's real noise or he's actually good. Like, it's still a small sample. Like, it's been like 8 games he's been going crazy. We've seen goalies go on these benders, you know what I mean? He'll probably regress to whatever the mean is soon, but like, it's not like Seattle's a bad defensive team. And the thing is, like, even if Columbus was like, oh, we're going to hard match against this bad defensive line for Seattle, the problem with Seattle is all their lines are pretty good. And all their lines play the exact same amount of minutes. So it's like, it's not like they're going to get an advantageous matchup all game. They're going to see all of the lines probably, and they're all about the same. Seattle's the most vanilla team in the history of vanilla ice cream. So, like, I just don't think this is the best matchup to do it. And I am the biggest Ken Johnson slappy there is. Like, I don't know if there's anyone bigger. They are 11K to full stack. So if you want to have them in your 20 max mix, for, fillers, I think it's perfectly fine. But in my one lineup, I don't think I'm going to really be stacking against Seattle. It just feels bad, but like, I don't mind that line. On the Seattle side, I want to get behind the Seattle line here because they have a 3.3 total and Columbus isn't good at all. The problem is all their lines play between 12 and 16 minutes. Yeah, it's baked into the price, but like, if you play the Tolvanen line, then, Wenberg is going to score. If you play Wenberg, then Burakovsky is going to score. If you play Beniers, McCann's going to score. You know what I mean? So, like, it just feels like a chore trying to figure out what Seattle line you want to play. And I don't think there's a right answer because they all play the same amount of time. And, like, I get it. Like, Dave Haxtell has the ability to roll 4 lines. That is a good thing in the NHL. It's just terrible for DFS, so I don't love this game.
Yeah, like, I'm just not going to go over Seattle very long. What I mentioned in our Discord earlier, I mean, you brought up the ice time thing, first of all. Like, in the 2 games since Jaden Schwartz came back, every single forward is within 4 minutes of each other in total ice time, not like 5-on-5 or even strength or whatever, like in total ice time. And no forward has gotten over 17 minutes. So they're playing all 4 lines relatively equally. Like Jared McCann scored 40 goals last year and he's playing 14 minutes a game. Like Alex Wenberg has like 40 goals in his last 4 seasons and he's playing like 17 minutes a game. Like, and what I mentioned in our Discord is that they play they play their 2 power play units relatively evenly, and they have 2 forwards from each of their even strength lines on each of the power play units. So each pairs of forwards that play on the power play are on different power play units that skate together at 5-on-5. Like there's absolutely no correlation when you combine that with the spread out ownership. Like if you want to one-off like Oliver Bjorkstrand or Jared McCann or Jordan Eberle or something like that, like I think that's fine. But like saying my single entry is going to be or even 3 max or whatever is going to be a Seattle Kraken filler line. Like this game takes enough luck as it is to be successful. I think you need to be really lucky to hit on the right Seattle line on the right night if you're doing a single entry on a slate with 24 teams playing. So I'm out on Seattle. I think I'm kind of with you with Columbus. Like, I have no interest in the Gaudreau line. Like, Johnny Gaudreau, he has 20 shots in his last 15 games. Like, you'll see spurts where David Pastrnak will do that on a weekend. He's just not doing anything. He has no, Chinnikov's fine. But Sillinger, he had that hat trick. Congrats to him. He's still not doing anything. That would lead me to believe that like anything close to that is repeatable. So it would be the Fantilli Johnson Brozovic line that I do have interest in, but it is a brutal matchup. Like the thing about Seattle is like, I get why Seattle runs the lines the way that they are, because as you said, they're all fairly good defensive lines. And if not one of your lines isn't getting buried and you can trust them all with 14, 15, 16 minutes of ice time, it just doesn't lend to a good matchup. And the one thing that Columbus had been doing well was scoring on the power play. Seattle has one of the best penalty kills in the league, and they're one of the least penalized teams. So, like, I think a one-off Adam Fantilli would make sense. Like a one-off Marchenko, I think makes sense, even though he's lined up on the third line. This is a game where I wouldn't mind picking out one guy as a one-off in a 3-2-1 stack or something like that, but I'm not stacking anything.
Yeah, I think my favorite play from this game, honestly, might be playing Vinny Dunn. But we'll get to defensemen at the end. And it's even a chore trying to pick Seattle defensemen, too. But Los Angeles Kings with a 3.5 total heading into Detroit with a 2.9 total. Our Kings are in a rut, man. Tonight's the night, though. Nothing cures your woes like a trip into Detroit. Except for Rasmus Anderson. That was a bad joke, but like he got hit by a car. So I'm just an evil person. I should just stop talking. But anyway, there's no ownership on the Kings top line here. They're going to get the Larkin, Raymond, Perron matchup. And like, it's a good matchup. But that top line hasn't been great. And the more Fiala-Deneau line is going to get a better matchup. They are higher owned, 4.2% projected. I think like a Kempe one-off is fine because even if they aren't creating a bunch, like I know Byfield has disappeared and Kopitar's Kopitar, but Kempe is the goal scorer on that line. Let's be real. I think Kempe one-off is fine. My favorite line is the Kings second line. You want to go to the Kings third line, Dubois, Kaliev, Laferriere. I think you can leave Laferriere off. Just go Dubois, Kaliev. I think that's fine. My favorite line in this game is LA2, though. On the Detroit side, like, can we just get Larkin, DeBrincat, Kane, please? Or, like, Larkin, DeBrincat, anyone at this point? I'll take anyone with Larkin and DeBrincat together. As the lines are currently constituted, I don't have a ton of interest. No one has a ton of interest, apparently, with this rejected ownership. So, like, I don't know, man. Like, I want to figure out a Detroit line to play. I need Larkin and DeBrincat to be together before I can start playing the wings again.
I have no interest in Detroit. Perron and Larkin and Raymond are up over 70 minutes together. 1.9 expected goals for, 2.9 against. Like we mentioned on Thursday's show, like David Perron is just having a very, very bad season. He's been on the top line lately because they're trying to get him going because he's not doing anything on the third line, but all he's doing is making the third line or the top line a lot worse. So I'm out on Detroit 1. Detroit 2, like I have no interest in them either. Like they're splitting up the power play guys as well. So like JT Comfort plus the top lines on one power play, and then Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane are on the other power play. So that lends me to believe that they're going to be using like split power play time a lot more often, which was the one thing you could hang your hat on about this Detroit team is they were pretty bad at 5-on-5. But they drew a ton. They still are drawing a ton of power plays, 4.6 power plays per game over the last couple months. And all the guys were on the same power play unit together. So like maybe they could get there and, post a top 2 stack through their power play. But if they're splitting up the power play guys like that, you don't even have that anymore. So even though the Kings have lost 7 in a row, and they haven't given up more than 4 goals in any of those games, and they've only given up more than 3 once. Like this isn't a team getting beat like 5-1 or 6-2 or something like that. It's just a team that's having trouble scoring right now and is giving up 2 or 3 goals a game. Like I'm out on Detroit. It is Kings 2. I like the Kings top line's been really struggling to score goals for a while now. Like basically for like the last 6 weeks, it's been pretty brutal. Like outside of Kempe, there hasn't been a lot to talk about from the Kopitar Byfield side of things. So it's Kings 2. They're going to be going into that DeBrincat Kane matchup. They're going to be going into that Andrew Kopp matchup. Like those are great matchups at 5-on-5. Fiala still in the top power play unit for whatever that's worth. I mentioned him today in the picks article. A big problem with Fiala through like the first 2 months of the season is that he wasn't shooting a lot. Like this is a guy that over the last few years, you could typically rely on, at least 3 shots per game. That started to correct itself a little bit. His last 2 months, he's at 3 shots per game, which is a little bit more like what we'd like to see. That second line is scoring 3.9 goals per 60 at 5-on-5 in their time together this season. They've been really, really, really good. There's not a ton of ownership, like a little negative leverage, but 4.2% ownership. That's not enough to keep me away from them. Like they're what, $1,000 more expensive than the Pittsburgh line we just talked about, and they're playing a much worse defensive team in Detroit. So I really like this Kings 2 line. I agree with you. I think this is the line that I'm going to consider out of this game. Kings 3 is starting to get frustrating because there's been a lot of online discourse about Pierre-Luc Dubois and his contract and the trade and all that. And like all I'll say is like get Alex Lafreniere off that line. Like Dubois was a guy who could drive goal scoring at a first line rate and did so over the previous 2 years, and now he's driving goals at a fourth line rate. Put Carl Grundstrom there. Like I'm being serious about that. Like put Grundstrom next to them and let's see how they do. But it is the second line or nothing for me from Los Angeles. Also want to mention they're scratching Jordan Spence again to play Brant Clark, which like at this point, like you've gone 7 games in a row, 7 losses in a row. You haven't scored 4 goals in any of those games, and you refuse to dress your 2 top offensive defenseman prospects. It's even though they're both up with the NHL team. I really like this Kings team. I have some serious questions about how they're handling this lineup, but I still really like this Kings second line, all things aside. So it's Kings 2 for me, or probably nothing else out of this. Yeah,
Clayton just said Kaliev is out tonight. So, yeah, Kings 2 for me. Forget Kings 3 now because Dubois is going to be saddled with Lafreniere and probably your boy Grundstrom. He's not your boy, but
he's not a bad player. I think he's certainly better than Lafreniere. He's, Kaliev is struggling a little bit, but I mean, I don't think it matters. Like I don't think there's any combination until they get Victor Arvidsson back that they can put on that third line to kind of help Dubois out.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one, y'all. Edmonton Oilers with a 3.9 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 2.6. Clayton says it's Anderson Dolan on the third line. He's a center though. Never mind. I had enough. I had enough of this game. Anyway, let's move on to Edmonton, Montreal. Not much ownership on the Edmonton top line. They are the most expensive line on the slate, 23,900. 6.1% projected ownership, our highest positive leverage on the night. I'm out of things to say here. The couple things I'll say as to why you wouldn't play them. Caulfield, Suzuki, Slafkovsky have been legitimately good defensively. If it's Montembeault, I didn't see the confirmation on their goalie. If it is Montembeault, he's good. So, like, McDavid's matchup proof, and I get it, and you're getting him at lower ownership. I also get it. I'm just trying to give you some of the other side here. Caulfield, Suzuki, Slafkovsky, actually good defensively, and that's the line they're going to see a bunch of. So I'm completely fine with Edmonton 1 here. They're probably still one of my favorite plays here tonight. If Montreal was still taking penalties like they were in the beginning of the season, this would be a much easier click in my one lineup. But like with their price and them not taking a ton of penalties facing off against Suzuki, it'll make me think about it at least. On the Edmonton side, on the Montreal side, I don't mind that top line. Caulfield, Suzuki, Slafkovsky. I know Josh Anderson is out upstairs, and I don't know if Raphael Harvey-Pinard's going to move up or what here. I don't mind him with Monahan, so like
I think he's playing with Evans and Gallagher.
I don't mind that. Like, I honestly don't mind that. But really, it's the top lines in this game.
Yeah. So the Montreal top line has legitimately been very good defensively since they added Slafkovsky there. Like, their expected goals numbers, like, well below average. Their goals against numbers below average. You know, in a good way. What's giving me pause is, like, we've been saying this for like a couple weeks now, and Buffalo went into Montreal a week ago, and their top line absolutely beat their brains in. You know what I mean? I think the top line had 9 points in that game, the Tuck Thompson Skinner line, and you know they've been playing a lot better, but there's certainly no McDavid. I really just do love Edmonton here. Like, Montreal is taking fewer penalties. They have been over the last couple months. They're actually below the league average, where like the first 6 weeks of the season, they are well above the league average in that regard. But I wrote about McDavid in the picks article today. We keep waiting for this line to slow down, but they're not. Like, what I pointed out in the article is McDavid's line, since their coach took over, and it's been about 2 months now since Knobloch took over behind the bench, they're scoring 5.9 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, which is better than 9 teams are doing on the power play so far this season. Even lately, like just since Christmas, they're at 5 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Like, there hasn't been anybody that's really been able to slow them down. The only games where they're not doing well, it almost seems like they're disinterested in playing. They're just so far ahead of everyone else. So I like it is a bit of a tough matchup against Montreal one, but McDavid is matchup proof. Like, you and I have talked about that quite a bit over the last couple seasons. It's like, even if McDavid's on the road in a quote tough matchup, if he's going to come in with low ownership, then you still play him, and he's going to come in with low ownership, 6.1% on the top line against a 24% top 2 stack percentage. Even if that comes up to 10% for that line, I would still play them here tonight. I have a lot of interest in Edmonton 1. Edmonton 2 is like kind of interesting because they're still playing real well, and they get better matchups against the depth. But the thing is with Josh Anderson hurt, you take arguably the worst defensive forward out of Montreal's lineup. And even if they go 11-7, it doesn't really matter that much. Like, you know, Harvey-Pinard or Ulunen or, you know, even like Mitch Stevens or whatever, like, they're all better defensively than Josh Anderson. So, you know, if you want to play Edmonton 2, go ahead. But it is Edmonton 1 that I really like here. On the Montreal side, like, I think Gallagher, Jake Evans, and Harvey-Pinard is like an $8,200 line or something like that. They are not expensive. The only reason you play them at all, other than like one-off in Gallagher or something like that, is if you're playing them with a super expensive Tampa Bay, Colorado game stacking here with Edmonton, which I Honestly, I don't like game stacking on 12-game slates. I think it's kind of possible in this matchup. But it's really Edmonton one that I like here. It's by quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because they played the Wings the other night on Thursday, and they were getting shut out going into the third period. And like McDavid had a couple shots, Hyman had a couple shots, Nugent Hopkins had a straight 0. They they ended up winning that game in regulation, and Hyman had like 30 DK points. Nugent Hopkins had a shot bonus and an assist. McDavid had a shot bonus and a goal and an assist. It's just crazy how fast that it can turn around for them. And like, if they do anything remotely close to what Buffalo did when they went in there, like they're just going to run them over, which is kind of like crazy considering how good they actually have been. Colorado Avalanche with a 3.4 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs also have a 3.4 total. Lehkonen is still out tonight. Nichushkin wasn't at practice this morning because he's sick. They're expecting him to play. If he doesn't play, I'm not 100% sure who will move up to the top power play. Maybe it's Colton. Hopefully it's Colton. It should be Colton.
I think it would be Colt because he got some games there like a month ago when I forget who was out. Was it McKinnon that was out or was it Branton? There was another one of the players out and they moved Colton up. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, just be aware of that. Like I don't mind if Nichushkin is in. I don't mind Colorado 2 as a stack as a filler. They're 13,300. Colorado 1's a bit interesting. Like I don't love Johnny Drew in there, and they're coming in with double the ownership of the Oilers, like more than double. I get it. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to bash Marty Jones too hard here because he actually has been the Leafs' best goalie since Wool got hurt, and it's not particularly close. I like Colorado 1 here. Don't get me wrong. Like I just don't love Drew in there. If you want to stack them, be my guest. Like they have a massive top 2 stack percentage. It's a 12-game slate, and their top 2 stack percentage is 26.8%. Like that's just crazy.
It's higher than
12-game slate. Yeah, it's higher than Edmonton's, and they're $1,400 cheaper than Edmonton. So like there is absolute merit going to Colorado 1 here, and I like them. I just again don't love Drouin. I like Colorado 2 as a filler. On the Toronto side, it's interesting because they're not getting a lot of ownership, and I know like it's the Leafs, and we love bashing them. But the one thing they don't have problems doing is scoring. And the one thing Colorado does do is take a ton of penalties. So I don't mind, Toronto 2 here. I don't mind Toronto 1. I don't even mind some sort of power play stack here. The Matthews line is coming in at 0.9% projected ownership. The Nylander line is coming in at 2.1% projected. They have the same total in this game. Toronto's home. It's not like they're on the road, you know what I mean? So, like, I don't know, man. I like the Leafs here, especially with their ownership being so low. Colorado takes a ton of penalties. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game.
So, this is kind of my issue with playing Colorado 1 is, and it's an issue that I'm going to instantly rebut myself against as soon as I'm finished my next sentence. Colorado's top line is just not generating anything at 5-on-5 with Drouin there. Like they're not. Like since Drouin got added back to that line, they're at 2.4 expected goals for, 2.3 actual goals for per 60 minutes. That's below average. That's below the league average. This Colorado top line with Drouin there is generating expected goals and goals at a below league average rate. The problem is like they all play like 25 minutes a game. And the power play has been great. In fact, I was looking at McKinnon's production of late. They played 8 games since Christmas. 8 out of 13 of McKinnon's points in that span has been on the power play. He's only gotten 5 points off the power play. That's how, like, they're just not doing anything at 5-on-5. And the Matthews line is really, really good defensively. Now, it's Marty Jones in net. Like, we're all kind of waiting for that. For that floor to fall through because he's not as good as he's been showing. That is kind of the reason why I would still be on Colorado here is one, it's Martin Jones in net. And like, I just, it's like it's kind of like Antti Ranta, where even in like a couple weeks would not be enough to dissuade me of what I think of him as a goalie. And the other thing is Toronto's penalty kill has actually gotten really, really bad. I was looking over the last 5 weeks. They're bottom 5 in the league by both shots against and goals against per minute while on the PK. So this is a Toronto penalty kill that's been struggling against the Colorado power play that's obviously just been tearing everybody apart. That is the one reason why I would still want to play Colorado. But I don't want to play a $22,500 line with Jonathan Drouin on it in the hopes that they can score 2 or 3 power play goals. That's just asking way too much for any line, even if this was like Connor McDavid's line in last year in Edmonton when they were, arguably the best power play we've seen in a generation. So that's kind of why, I think I'd rather play Edmonton than Toronto here tonight. It's Toronto and Colorado too, I think is kind of interesting. Because Colton and Nichushkin have really, really good numbers together. 75 shot attempts, 3.5 expected goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 when Colton and Nichushkin are on the ice. Those are really, really good offensive numbers. I wrote up Logan Connor in the picks article. He's been getting a lot more ice time of late. They're basically just playing they're doing what we talked about the other day. They're playing the top line 24, 25 minutes. They're playing the second line 17, 18 minutes. And then the third and fourth lines are getting 6 minutes a player. It's actually really funny to see. It's not quite that extreme, but it's honestly not far off. I don't mind Colorado too as a filler. If you want to just use Colton and O'Connor and just eschew the top power play guys, go with God. But I don't mind Colorado too as a filler stack here. The Toronto side is where things get a little bit more interesting for me because I don't think enough was made of Timothy Liljegren being back in the lineup. And it might not seem like that big of a deal, but Toronto only has so many puck movers on the blue line. And they only have so many puck movers whenever Morgan Riley is off the ice. When Timothy Liljegren was hurt, Connor Timmins wasn't playing either. So you had Morgan Riley, who's having a really, really good season. And then when he's off the ice, it's Simon Benoit, TJ Brody, a 40-year-old Mark Giordano. There was nobody else to move the puck. And with Liljegren back, there is somebody to move the puck whenever Riley's off the ice. And I think that's helping the offense. And you've seen it with the top line. The top line, since Liljegren came back, is at 4 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5, which is a lot better than they had been doing for a good chunk of this season. Matthews, 10 goals and 48 shots in his last 11 games. He's been on a little tear. I don't mind going to Toronto 1 here. I think it's Toronto 2. I'd like a little bit better because they have, a bigger sample going back before Liljegren and playing well. 4.3 expected goals, 3.4 actual goals per 60 minutes. If you want to do a Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, which would be really expensive, or a Matthews, Marner, Nylander, or something like that, I think that's perfectly fine. It is Toronto too. I like the best in this game. It's both second lines, honestly. I just worry that it's like that old tweet, it's a tough matchup for Nathan McKinnon as you're begging for change outside of a coffee shop. He can do it to anybody on any given night. I just worry about relying basically only on power play points for him to really be, for that line to really be a value in DFS.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to land on Colorado 1 in your single entry when Edmonton's on this slate, when Tampa's on the slate playing the Ducks. You know what I mean? So, I think they're fine. And you make good points about the power play. And they certainly can get there on the power play. It's just, I don't know, man. But again, thank you guys so much for the support over the past month. You guys are crazy. I have no faith in humanity, but you have restored it a little bit for me. You have supported us so much between the super chats and all the affiliate link signups. You guys are crazy. I'm muted. I've been talking to myself muted for the past 5 minutes here. Anyway, here I am. I'm saying you guys are crazy with the support you have given us over the past month between the super chats and the affiliate links. I just put the link into the chat again. Again, it doesn't even have to be NHL. It can be NFL if you're looking, to get some playoff NFL stuff. You can sign up for NFL Lineup Builder, whatever. This link takes you right to the subscription page. You can do NBA, you can do MMA, May. There's a nice card today. MLB's coming up soon, PGA. But thank you so much for the support. With the NHL stuff, if you're still on the fence, you get player and ownership projections, top stacks, tools, line combination, and the premium Discord, which is always a fun time. Anaheim Ducks with a 2.6 total. Heading into Tampa, the Lightning have a 3.9 total. Highest top two stack percentage of the night is in this game. It is the Tampa Bay top line. Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, Steven Stamkos. They are priced in between Colorado 1 and Edmonton 1 here at 23,100. This might be the best power play spot on the night, all things considered. This line is all gas, no brakes. They're completely fine here. Like, they're getting 16% projected ownership. That might seem like a lot, but that's still like half their top two stack percentage. I think they are perfectly fine here. Ducks take a lot of penalties. They take a lot of penalties. Their penalty kill's not good. They just lost Drysdale. Not that really hurts defensively, but Zegras is out. Minty's out. They're a mess right now. Gibson got hurt. So I think Tampa 1 definitely in play here. The more interesting thing here is Josh really going to, tout the Ducks here? You're goddamn right I am, because Tampa's just not a good defensive team. Like they're not awful. They're just not good. And McTavish, Warren, Vetrano coming in with under 1% projected ownership here at 17-1. It's a bit pricey, but they're fully correlated. Like, Tampa, I don't know, man. Like, I just don't believe in Tampa defensively. I'm not saying go out and, play the Ducks top line here in single entry. I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm not that crazy. Oh, I am. But, like, that's for another story. But, like, I think even in, like, the more lineups you get to here, I think that Ducks top line is in play. They do have a 2.6 road total. I know it's low, but it is like, I don't believe in Tampa defensively. So both top lines for me.
Yeah, I won't take a long time with Tampa here. They're in a tremendous spot. Like, Anaheim over the last 2 months is taking 5.1 minor penalties per game. I think no other team is higher than 4.3, so they're taking like 30% more penalties than the next most penalized teams. Like, that's why you said it was such a good power play spot for Tampa, because it is all three guys on the top power play unit, obviously. So Tampa 1, like, perfectly fine, perfectly in play. They're coming in at like 150% higher ownership than Edmonton. Like, that would be like one of the things I would say. Like, there are expensive lower owned lines available here tonight, but it is a really, really good spot for that Tampa top line. It is Anaheim that I want to talk about a little bit more. There's no ownership coming in on them. 0.9% ownership at 17,100 on DraftKings. You mentioned the defensive problems for Tampa Bay. Over the last 4 weeks, by expected goals against the 5-on-5, they're in the middle of the league. Like, they're 16th. The team just above them is Buffalo. The team just below them is Columbus. Like, that's about the defensive play that we're expecting here from Tampa Bay. What kind of sucks is like taking Drysdale and Mintyukov out of the lineup takes a lot of puck movers out. Like, that's the one thing that really worries me is, Lacombe's fine. Fowler is Fowler or whatever, but like, there are only so many guys who can competently move the puck in that lineup. So that's a little bit of a concern, but I don't know if I'm going to necessarily get to the Ducks in single entry, but I agree with you. Like, if you're 20 maxing, or if you're playing 50 lineups or 150 lineups, like, I don't know why people would necessarily be afraid to stack against this Tampa team. Like, they have been giving up over the last 6 weeks, which is like nearly 20 games. They've been giving up more goals per minute than Montreal or New Jersey. So, like, just imagine Anaheim was going into Montreal tonight, what you might think of them as a top two stack, because that's basically what, at least on the defensive side of things, certainly not offensively, but defensively, that's basically what Tampa Bay is. They're Montreal. So just kind of think about that if you're playing a ton of lineups here tonight, but it is Tampa 1 for me in this one.
Yeah. I mean, Tampa has a 3.9 total, highest on the slate. So, yeah. Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.4 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 3.2. Mark Scheifele is out tonight. Nikolai Ehlers is a game-time decision. Flyers lost last night. This game is a mess. I wish it wasn't on the slate, but here we are. Like, Winnipeg hasn't lost the game since, 1997, it feels like. They have been absolutely rolling. Scheifele being out kind of really puts a damper on things here. Would probably move Adam Lowry up to the top line. And if Ehlers is out, you could potentially see a top line of Perfidi, Lowry, and Velarde, and then just the cascading effect down the lineup. It's just not going to be a good lineup. I don't have a ton of interest in Winnipeg here if Scheifele is out. Well, Scheifele is out. I meant if Ehlers is out as well. I don't I know Hart went last night. It's Urson tonight. I don't love Winnipeg here, and I don't really like Philly either. If you want a one-off Tippett, I guess that's fine. A one-off Travis Konechny is always fine. They just have a 2.4 road total. It's the lowest total on the slate besides Chicago. That team doesn't count though. So I'm pretty much out on this game outside of maybe a Velarde one-off or a Konechny or Tippett one-off.
Yeah, so should clarify, obviously with those injuries, yes, Scheifele's out. Ehlers was at optional skate, I think, so I suspect he's going to play tonight. Kyle Connor was also at the optional skate, and he's been injured for a while. He got rid of his non-contact jersey. He practiced today in a normal jersey. That means close to returning. Now, whether he actually returns here tonight or not, we'll find out. The nice thing is that because it's hockey night in Canada, Winnipeg doesn't have their normal 8 p.m. Eastern start time. It's 7 p.m. Eastern, so it is an early lock. We'll get to know what Winnipeg lines are. If Kyle Connor's back, it wouldn't surprise me if they moved Cole Perfidi to center and had Ehlers, Perfidi, Velarde or something like that, or Ehlers, Perfidi, Iafallo, something like that. And then had Adam Lowry on the top line. So just got to pay attention for warm-ups. I'm going to say that, I kind of agree with – I'm going to wait to see where Cole Perfidi is first. Because if it's Connor, Perfidi, Ehlers, that would be a line I would definitely play here tonight. I will say I have no interest in playing Philly back-to-back on the road. The only positive aspect of this matchup is that it's a good power play matchup for Philly, and a good power play matchup for Philly doesn't really exist. It's not possible. Their power play has been terrible. So I have no interest in the Flyers other than your typical one-offs, a one-off Konechny, I think is fine. A one-off, Cam or Owen Tippett certainly with him on the power play, I think is fine. The only interest I have in Winnipeg is if they move Perfidi to the middle and give him two really good wingers like Connor and Velarde or Ehlers and Velarde or something like that. Other than that, I have no interest in stacking in this game.
Yeah, not a big fan of this game. Let's move on to the next one then. Dallas Stars with a 3.7 total heading into Chicago. The Hawks have a 2.3. I don't have interest in the Hawks. If you're 150 maxing and they get into your crunch,
don't even bother. Just talk about the Stars.
If they get into your crunch organically, X amount after.
If the Chicago Blackhawks get into your crunch organically, set fire to your computer.
There you go. That is probably the correct analysis. Yeah, out on the Hawks. I don't even know if they're a team. What to do with Dallas here? They got absolutely curb stomped last night by the Preds in Dallas. Duchesne got moved to the top power play unit over Ben. I don't know if that's going to stick. Ben took an awful double minor on the power play yesterday. So I don't know. the top line's coming in at 4.5% projected ownership against the Hawks. What worries me is like it's the Hawks, so they might only play like 14, 15 minutes. So like I'm more interested in Duchesne, Sagan, Marchment, or Wyatt Johnston, Ben Dodonov. Like I think the top line is perfectly fine. I just don't think I'm going to prioritize them in 1 to 3. I think that's more of an MME play. I am, however, interested in Duchesne, Sagan, Marchment, and the third line, possibly in my 1 to 3.
Yeah, what I'll mention is that Chicago has been using that Jason Dickinson line in a shutdown role, and I think we talked about this on Tuesday's show, if I'm not mistaken. But that Dickinson line has actually been pretty good defensively. It's been, they get Seth Jones back. That's nominally going to help. The Jason Dickinson line has been pretty good defensively this season, and they're going to be getting that Dallas top line. So the Dallas top line, like I know it's Chicago, and they can beat their brains in even in 16 minutes of ice time, but it's a pretty bad 5-on-5 matchup. The Chicago penalty kill's been good. It's just been the goaltending on the penalty kill that hasn't been that good. And, that can change on a dime. So I'm out on Dallas 1 here. It is the Dallas second line that I prefer. I even wrote them up in the picks article today, free to read over at Stokastic.com. They're coming in with a little bit over leverage, but Tyler Seguin has been pretty, on a pretty good streak of late. Like this line has been really, really good basically all season. 4.3 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 this season for that second line. I kind of like Dallas too, because they're going to avoid that Dickinson matchup. They've been playing very, very well basically all season, well above average by expected goals even. I think they're another one of those like 14 to 16K, mid-price fillery type stacks that I'm going to be considering tonight, because there's nothing like once you get that Dickinson line off the ice, there is absolutely nothing to be worried about for matchup concerns against the Chicago team.
Yeah. 3.7 road total back-to-back as well. So Arizona Coyotes with a 2.9 total heading into Minnesota. The Wild have a 3.1. Looks like Gustafsson could be back tonight, and it also looks like Kirill Kaprizov is a game-time decision.
And Jonas Brodin, I think, as well.
Yeah. So Minnesota could be getting back some much-needed reinforcements tonight. That being said, our boy, Dylan Guenther, on the third line with Nick Bukestad and Logan Cooley. Yeah, baby. 10,800. I like that line. With Bukestad moving to the third line there, Kerfoot's moving in between Krause and Michelli. I actually don't even mind that line either. The top line with McBain, like they're going to get Joel Eriksson Ek, and it's McBain and it's Joel Eriksson Ek. Just do the math there. So I am interested in that Arizona third line. Don't mind Arizona second line. Now with Kaprizov possibly being back, kind of going to have to wait and see what the lines look like, because I'm going to assume, I don't know his price on DraftKings, but it's probably more expensive than anyone on that top line. That being said, it's a good power play matchup, right? So, like, maybe Kaprizov doesn't play. But if you are interested in the Wild tonight, I would have a swap ready for him, just in case. I don't know. Like, as it is, I like Minnesota 1. If I'm considering Minnesota 1, just be like keep an expensive D-man starting at that game's lock or a little bit later, so you can get Kaprizov in the lineup if he's in. So Minnesota 1, just wait on Kaprizov there. I do like Arizona 3.
Yeah, the thing is like with that late start, there aren't a ton of lines. Like if you roster Kaprizov and he's not playing, like you're basically looking at like maybe like Dallas 1 or Vegas 1, or else you're figuring out some power play stack. So there's just not a lot to swap to if you do try to go with Kaprizov and he's out of the lineup. Until we know, like, it's tough to say what we want to play. Like, it's not like this is like a Marcus Johansson might be back and it could move like Brandon Duhaime from the third to the fourth line. Like, this is a top 5 offensive winger in the league that could be back in the lineup in a very good matchup. Like, it's it affects a lot. I would have a lot of interest, no matter what the top line looked like, whether it was Eriksson Ek with Kaprizov, or whether it was Rossi with Kaprizov, or whether Boldy was on the top line instead of Zuccarello. Whatever it was, I would have interest, because there's just not a lot that I'm worried about on the Arizona side. Like with Eriksson Ek taking care of that Keller line, like there are bad defensive lines in that depth from Arizona, and the Arizona penalty kills not like. Minnesota's been bad on the PK, so is Arizona. And with Kaprizov back, it makes a big difference on the power play for Minnesota if he's back. It's just really hard to say, stack Kaprizov, Zuccarello, and Rossi, and then if not, like you can swap to like Vegas 1 or something like that. I just don't like limiting my options like that unless you have 20 lineups, 150 lineups, 150, whatever, where you can go with a bunch of different combinations. Because otherwise, you're just kind of, if Kaprizov doesn't play, you're just forcing yourself into one spot. I do like Minnesota here tonight. Like they have a 3.1 total. That's not nothing. It just worries me that there isn't a lot to pick from if we decide to roster Kaprizov and he's not playing. But it's something I'm going to have to think about, because there, on a 12-game slate, you could get Kaprizov at home against the Arizona Coyotes at like sub 1% ownership. And that's something that's always appealing in tournaments. So something to really think about. I just think it's tough because your options are limited because of the start time. On the Arizona side, I kind of agree with you with Bjugstad and Cooley. Bjugstad, Cooley, Genther. It's a very, very cheap secondary stack. Not a big sample for Bjugstad and Cooley. They do have good shot attempt generation numbers. They're coming in over owned, but it's nothing like super extreme compared to, we talked about some other filler stacks like from Columbus or Seattle earlier in the slate. Like this line's under 3% projected ownership. Genther has 10 shots in the 3 games since being recalled. Once you get past the Eriksson Ek line, I'm not super concerned about matchups, especially if Brodin isn't back in the lineup for Minnesota. So I don't mind that Genther, Bjugstad, Cooley line as a filler. For Minnesota, all I'll say is that you're kind of handcuffing yourself if you try to roster Kaprizov and he doesn't play. But if you have a lot of lineups, it might be worth the risk of him, not playing, where if he does, you're going to get him at like 0.7% ownership or something like that.
So I just went and looked on DraftKings. He's 8,300, which is expensive, right? So what you could do, and if you have one lineup, it could be risky, but defensemen starting at that lock time or later, Dobson 7,300, Yossi 7,200, Rasmus Anderson 6,900, Uyghur 6,700, Pietrangelo 6,600, right? You put one of those guys into your lineup with regular Minnesota 1 that it's projected to be. If he's in, you put him in, you drop your defenseman down, you punt the defenseman.
Yeah.
He's out, you have a power play quarterback going in your lineup. So like you could do something like that. It just, like, do you want to hinge your night on waiting for news, or you have another lineup you like? That's
I think that's probably a better play than just like if Kaprizov isn't playing, swapping to Vegas 1 or something like that. It's just downgrade your defenseman if you have to.
Yeah. New York Islanders with a 3.2 total heading into Nashville. The Predators also have a 3.2 total. Lane Lambert, baby. Lane Lambert. So these are the lines that they ran yesterday, or their last game. Horvat, Lee, Wahlstrom, Nelson, Engvall, Fashing, and then Barzal, Palmieri, Holmstrom. That didn't last at all. And then Barzal was back with Horvat and Lee. Now they're practicing Barzal, Palmieri, Holmstrom, Horvat, Lee, Wahlstrom, Nelson, Engvall, Fashing today. It's not gonna last. This is a pretty good power play matchup for the Islanders. Now, Lankinen won last night, so it's the juice tonight. But I don't know. Like, there's no way Barzal ends up with, Simone Holmstrom all night. He's going to end up with Horvat and Lee. I don't mind going like Horvat, Barzal, Palmieri, or Horvat, Barzal, Lee, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, there's no ownership on the Islanders lines as it is. They're all pretty cheap. This is back-to-back for Nashville. I don't know, man. This is also a good power play spot for Nashville. And Nashville played last night, and they won, but you're getting positive leverage here on Nashville 1. So they're fully correlated. Nyquist is having an unreal season. Like, he's involved at 5-on-5. He's involved on the power play. He's just not, an empty vessel coming along for the ride. So I like Nashville 1 here. I do like some sort of Islander stack. And I think if you do those broken power play stacks, you get the lines even lower on. Not that you need to get them lower on. But, Barzal and Horvat are going to be playing together in the first period probably.
Yeah, I mean, Barzal got some time on the second line as well. Like, by the middle of the second period, they basically abandoned their bottom six, stapled Oliver Wahlstrom to the bench, and just had Matt Barzal double shifting. The problem on DK tonight is because Barzal is, quote, the third line center, which he's not. He played over 21 minutes in the last game. Him and Nelson and Horvat are now all centers on DK. And, that can certainly mess with roster construction a little bit. It's tough to say. It's like, do you want to play old Islanders 1, even though you might only get like a half game of ice time with them together and with Nelson and with Lee not on the same power play? Like, that's kind of the problem I'm running into. Like, even if they staple Oliver Wahlstrom to the bench after the first period, you only get 2 periods of Barzal, Horvat, and Lee together, right? And then Lee doesn't skate on the power play with them. So you lose 1 period of correlation at even strength and on the power play. And then you have 2 periods of lacking of power play correlation for that old top line. That's just kind of the problem I'm running into with the Islanders. Like, it's not a bad matchup, as you said, Nashville back-to-back on the road. And the thing is, like, these lines are all coming in like 1%, 2%, 3%, which is fine. But, if they get out to a 2-0 lead or a 3-0 lead, maybe they stick with the lines somewhat, and that Nelson line becomes a third line and Barzal skates 17 or 18 minutes on, quote, the second line or whatever. Like, there's just so many moving parts there that, if you want to just play Barzal and Palmieri or something like that, I think that's fine because they're both on the power play together. They'll ostensibly get some 5-on-5 time together. That's basically the only pairing I would have interest in playing from the Islanders is Barzal and Palmieri because they're going to play some at 5-on-5. Palmieri plays with Barzal on the power play. Nashville does take their fair share of penalties. I think that's the only kind of pair that I have interest from the Islanders. On the Nashville side, like, the Islanders' penalty kill is bad, but Nashville is back-to-back. The Islanders don't take a lot of power plays. Nashville doesn't draw a ton of power play opportunities. Like, they're basically league average over the last couple months. And their power play has been riding pretty hot. They're shooting 26%, which, like, 20% would say, I think that's unsustainable. Like 15, 16, 17% would be like fairly high. So that number could come down quite a bit. I think I'm out on Nashville entirely here. It's Barzal, Palmieri, basically the only thing I like from the Islanders for stacking purposes, but there's not a whole lot I like in this game.
Yeah. Boston Bruins with a 3.6 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 2.9. With these Boston lines, man, like, they're just driving me nuts. Like, Pasternak, Saka, Bachquist, Marchand, Coyle, DeBrusk, then Geeky, Frederick, Danton, Heinen. Like, I'm a broken record with Boston. I think Pasternak is a very good one-off, and I like Boston too. Marchand, Coyle, DeBrusk. Like, can we move James Van Riemsdyk up a little bit here? Or I don't know, man. Like, I don't know.
He actually did get a couple shifts on the top line towards the end of their last game. I saw that. It's like, please just leave him there.
Yeah. Like, Jesper Bachquist doesn't do too much for me there. Again, so Pasternak 1 off. Boston 2, I'm in on. St. Louis 1, I'm going back to the well here. Like, Boston goaltending has been good, but, like, this isn't an elite defensive team like Boston normally is. little bit of negative leverage here, 6.7% projected ownership, 5.8% top two stack. Like they're just a flat out good line. And they're 17K. I'm in on St. Louis one.
Yeah, I agree with you on Boston too, for the main reason being that the St. Louis second line is just really bad defensively. They're only up to 50 minutes under Bannister, but 3.1 expected goals against. Like Shen and Neighbors really don't have very good defensive numbers this year at all. It is St. Louis one that I like best in this game. I wrote them up in the picks article. 2.8 expected goals, 4.1 actual goals in 12 games. Under their new coach, that's per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. The last 5 games, every player on that top line has been over 20 minutes. They all play the same power play together. I mentioned on the last show how Jake Neighbors has been helping the power play, and especially Jordan Kyrou on the power play. And that's kind of important. Like Boston's penalty kill has basically been kind of like middle of the road for about 5 weeks now, and they lose. And without Brandon Carlo, they lose who I think is their best defensive defenseman. So this is a team that hasn't been, elite defensively or anything, and is missing their best defensive defenseman. And Boston's taking the second most minor penalties of any team in the league over the last 2 months. The only team that's been higher is Anaheim, that we talked about earlier. Now, not that St. Louis draws a ton of power plays, but they've been drawing more power plays, actually. They started the season at like 2.8, 2.9 power play opportunities per game. That's jumped up to 3.2 over the last 8 weeks. So this is a St. Louis team drawing more power plays against a Boston team giving up a ton of power plays. I think this is other than Colton Parayko on the blue line, I think that sucks. But I think for the forwards, at least, it's their best power play configuration. And the top line has been playing extremely well. There's a little bit of negative leverage on St. Louis 1, which kind of sucks, 6.7% ownership, but they're only 17K. So 17K for a really good top line, playing over 20 minutes a night, correlated on the power play against a team, taking a bunch of penalties that has not been great. They haven't been elite defensively anyway, and they're missing their best defensive defenseman. I think there are a lot of reasons to play St. Louis 1 here tonight.
Yeah. And, their projected ownership's a little bit negative leverage. I would imagine Kyrou comes in a bit higher just because he's coming off the hat trick, but I got the right line last game for the hat trick pick. I just chose the wrong player. You hate to see it, but you also love to see it. Calgary Flames with a 2.9 total heading into Las Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.1 total. Vegas 1 now fully correlated. Eichel, Stone, Barbashev. It's kind of interesting, but this is kind of a tough matchup. Calgary's I don't know how to describe Calgary. They're kind of like the Seattle Kraken's big brother. I think they're maybe a little bit better team, and they have a little bit of higher end talent. I don't know. I'm not going to rack my brain about it. I don't particularly love the matchup. Clayton said Eichel missed morning skate. We'll see what happens there. I don't know if it's illness or.
I'm gonna say this as well. I was looking at the shift chart for Vegas's last game. I think it was the Wednesday game against Boston. There was a stretch there where Eichel didn't play for 10 or 12 minutes or something like that before coming back for a couple shifts at the end of the game. So
quick party started. He's out.
Yeah, so there you go. So I mean, going back to Minnesota, there goes one of the stacks that you could have played late if Kaprizov isn't playing. So
yep. That should be interesting to see what they do with their lines. I kind of like Calgary before Eichel was out. Kind of still like Calgary now that he's out, and I like Kadri Zari. Just play the man a little bit more.
I mean, here's the top 2 lines for Vegas. It's Dorofeyev, Stevenson, Stone. That line is going to suck. Second line of Barbashev, Roy, and Marchessault though.
That's what I mean. Just saying.
Just saying.
I like Kadri Zari. I don't know, man. I like him as a filler. I don't know what to make of though. I like Roy. I do. That Vegas second line could be interesting. I'll let you talk about them That honestly could be interesting. I just don't love the matchup. Like Markstrom's been playing better. Flames have generally been decent defensively. So maybe in on some Vegas, but my favorite side of this game is Calgary.
Yeah, I do like Calgary here as well. Like, I want to shout out the Calgary top line. You know, we slander Jonathan Huberdeau enough where we kind of do have to mention when his line's playing well. And, you know, his top line, 72 shot attempts per 60 minutes since they all got assembled together, 2.6 expected goals. Like, that's not great. It's a little bit above league average, but it's a lot better than quite a bit of Jonathan Huberdeau's line combinations over the last couple of years. So they've been generating quite a bit. And Vegas's penalty kill has been kind of like Boston's and Toronto's. Honestly, they've been on a slide basically since like the first 6 weeks of the season. I was looking over the last month. Like Vegas is basically bottom 10 across the board by all their penalty killing numbers. I am not a big fan of stacking against Vegas, generally speaking, but I think this is kind of the right time to catch them. So on the Calgary side, like I have no problem playing Kadri, Zari, and Pospisil. I think it's the Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane line that I would go to here. I wrote up Michael Backlund in the picks article today. He's getting over 19 minutes a game. He's been shooting the puck more of late than he had been earlier this season. He's at up to like 3.3 shots per game over his last 16 games. That's about 20% of the season. The line is scoring 3 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They're probably going to avoid any shutdown matchups from Vegas. I think it's going to be the Nick Roy line that is going to be used in a shutdown role. And that's the only matchup I'm genuinely concerned about from a defensive standpoint. And if they're going to avoid that matchup, it's free reign against the Stevenson-Stone line. Like that, like Stevenson and Stone have just been terrible together this year. I have no concerns for the Vegas third line either. Like a line centered by Brett Howden. I mean, God bless the guy. He's carved an NHL career for himself, but he's not a good defensive player whatsoever. I think there could be some really, really good matchups for that Calgary line. There's not a lot of ownership coming in on them, 1.6% tonight on DK. It's Coleman, Backlund, Mangiapane that I like best. But honestly, it's almost like Seattle, where Seattle has 4 lines in play. I think Calgary has 3.
Always something with the late game. Always. At least it's not the Sharks, right? At least it's not the Sharks. Coming up after us, I know there's NFL Live Before Lock coming up. I don't know who's on that show. I forgot to write it down in the run sheet. And if I didn't, yeah. But if you are interested in NFL, just look at go to the Stochastic channel. You'll see it in the upcoming shows. Not a biggie. There, it should be starting either now or in 14 minutes at 3:30 because Lock is at 4:30. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen here. Top of the board, Cale Makar, $1,100 more expensive than any other defenseman on DraftKings at $8,400. You know, if you aren't a Drew N guy and you really want to make a very expensive Colorado stack, you do McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar. I like Makar. Like, it's just impossible to fit him with like an expensive line. Then you have Dobson, 7,300. It's a pretty good matchup for Dobson. Yossi, always a good play. But the couple that stand out to me are Bouchard. Who else? Who else was it? I forget, but it's Bouchard up at the top. Who else are you liking? I'm just a mess.
Yeah,
I'm honestly a mess.
Bouchard is at the top of my list as well in that matchup against Montreal. I had Pietrangelo up until Eichel was out. With no Eichel, I have no interest.
Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, I have no interest in using anybody from Vegas in that sense. I want to shout out Morgan Riley. The thing that we mentioned on Tuesday's show is that he's been blocking a lot more shots this year than he ever really has. And yeah, it was the San Jose game, and it didn't really, against San Jose, who cares? But against Colorado, he might have to do a lot more of that. So I don't mind Morgan Riley either. For it's the mid price range that I kind of like. Like the 4 to 6K range and the sub 3K range is kind of where I'm looking for DK here tonight. That 4 to 6K range, Hedman, Harley and Faber, I think, are in a tier by themselves. Hedman, obviously, with Chernak out, running the power play in a great power play matchup and all that. Thomas Harley, he's been averaging 24 minutes a game since Heiskanen got hurt, running the top power play for Dallas. Brock Faber. I was looking like, I think over Faber's, it was like his last 13 games, there are only 3 with under 9.9 DK points or something like that. Like, this guy rarely doesn't deliver. Vince Dunn as well for Seattle. Really good matchup against Columbus. He can be a productive defenseman. Probably the skater that I like best in this on the Seattle side. I'm going to be honest. And I'll shout out Colton Parayko as well, just because he also does block a lot of shots, and he's ostensibly running that St. Louis top power play. For the cheap-ish guys, not bargain bin, but cheap-ish, Jamie Oleksiak has been getting more ice time. I think he leads. He either leads or he's just behind Dunn for ice time amongst the Seattle defensemen over their last 5 games. So I like Oleksiak here. Marcus Pettersson, of course, for cheap against Carolina, should get lots of blocks. I'll shut out Ryan McDonough in that matchup with Nashville. Might have to block a lot of shots as well against the Islanders, but there are some cheap defensemen I like here. Brant Clark dressing for Los Angeles. He's almost certainly going to be running the second power play unit as well. He won't get a lot of ice time, but he's a high offensive upside defenseman. Jaden Struble, should mention him for Montreal just because he's been playing like 18, 19 minutes a game and might have to block a lot of shots here against Edmonton. He's stone min 2,500. And Jackson Lacombe from Anaheim. He's running, I don't know what you want to label those power play units from the Ducks anymore, but he's running one of the power plays for Anaheim, and he's only 2,700 on DK tonight.
Yeah, the other name I'll mention, Parker Wotherspoon for Boston. 5 straight block bonuses at 2,700. 5 straight games with block bonuses.
Yeah.
He's been averaging like 18, 19 minutes a night. Morgan Riley, 79 blocks in 39 games on the season. So a scotch over 2 blocks per game. It's a lot for him.
And I'll just mention this is the sample lineup that I made like through the show. Somebody had asked earlier in our chat. Pittsburgh 2, Nashville 1, Tarasov and Peak, goalie defense combo, and then a Morgan Riley one-off defenseman. That's their lineup. Just a sample lineup that I made for this show.
There you go. Goalies. I'm disconnected from reality right now. Jake Ottinger started last night, so Scott Wedgwood or Matt Murray are going to be starting for Dallas at 8,500. Vasilevsky 8,400. Stewie Skinner 8,300. It's probably going to be a Hellebuck tonight. It's probably the guy I would spend up for. Don't mind the Boston goalie either. Not a huge fan of spending up. I think UC Saros is fine at 7,900 here. Gustafsson, if he's in at 7,700, I'll have some interest there. Georgiev, I don't mind at 7,600. Connor Ingram, I'm always interested in. Sorokin stands out at 7,500 as well. I even like Markstrom. I liked Markstrom before Eichel was out. Now Eichel's out, so I don't mind Markstrom. Tarasov, like you had in your lineup, I don't mind. Like Lucas Dostal, like he's going to get the volume. Like I sometimes have volume concerns with Tampa Bay, but like the Ducks are just so bad that like he's going to see volume, and he has been pretty up and down, but he has been pretty good of late, so I don't mind that. If you really want to, fasten your seatbelt and go for a bumpy ride, Montembeault.
Okay. Thanks for the confidence. The 4 goalies that I had at the top of my board, it was Sorokin, Markstrom, Tarasov, Jarry. Hopefully Jarry doesn't get lit up. That can happen a lot against Carolina. But Markstrom, obviously now with Eichel out, that helps a lot. Sorokin cheap, Tarasov 7,100 at home against the Seattle team that honestly doesn't score a ton of goals. The last guy I'll mention is Hellebuck for Winnipeg. Philly just has a really, really bad power play. Even if Scheifele's out, that doesn't really matter for all that much for Hellebuck. And Philly has been able to generate some shots at 5-on-5. So as long as Hellebuck starts, I don't mind him either. If you want to pay up for an expensive goalie, you're on mute again.
God damn it! I'm having a tough time.
Why are you doing it?
I don't know, Avery. I don't know, but because I know I'm going to get this question. Yes, I don't mind Accord at 8,100. He is the best goalie since Dominik Hasek. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I had him in the picks article. Been shooting the puck a little bit more. Mentioned him earlier in the show. Let's go with our boy, my boy, Kevin Fiala.
I've been picking your hat trick pick in my head. That's the only thing I've been doing right. Let's see here. Nazem Kadri. Let's do it. Come on, Kadri.
That's spicy.
Yeah. But yeah. That is the slate, man. There is a big old slate on Monday because it's Martin Luther King Day here in the United States. I don't know if
That's why we're on school
Yeah.
Monday. It's his birthday.
yeah. I don't know
Junior.
I don't know if DraftKings is going to run the main slate for the day games. They usually don't. But if they include the 6 p.m. games, there will be a 5-game main slate if GPPs are worth a damn on Monday. There is NFL, though. We will be here, but we will definitely be here on Tuesday. Keep a heads up for Monday. We'll drop a message in the Discord or on Twitter or whatever. But I forget my send-off from the last show. I'm going to have to go look it up because I want to start sending off the show like that. But good luck, everybody, and we'll see you in the Discord.
Good luck tonight, everyone.